Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here for session number 6 of 6. This will be our final session here for the 6-part series, but we're certainly not done there. We have a lot of tools in the works for the coming weeks and months, and we definitely thank you for joining us today. Before we get to our wonderful panel, I did want to go over a few of the ground rules for this session. First and foremost, audio. We want to make sure that you hear us crystal clear, and GoToWebinar offers a couple of options, computer or phone. So please make sure that you hear us as clearly as you possibly can. The most important one, questions. GoToWebinar offers a questions panel, and this is an open panel discussion. We're going to save about 15 minutes towards the end where we can take all of your questions live for the panel. And if we don't get to all of them, we will answer them via email afterwards. Finally, the most important question that we get every time is, can I get a recording of this session? That's an absolute yes. All registrants will receive a recording afterwards and a copy of the slide presentation as well. So who is Management One? For those who haven't had exposure to our brand before, our purpose is to provide financial security for our people, our clients, and our affiliates. And we do that through merchandise intelligence and education like this for independent retailers. But we are retailers first, with over 3 decades of experience in the industry. And I want to definitely throw out there some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, strategies from all of our retailers out there. Some of those aren't direct services that we offer. So you have to keep in mind that a lot of this is informational in nature. If you are going to proceed with any of the strategies that we are going to be talking about today or any of our past webinars, you have to consult the experts in that particular field. We understand every business is different and you all have your own unique constraints. So we want to take that into account as well. I want to welcome our panel today. We're going to invite Rich Kaiser and Georgianne Bender from Kaiser and Bender. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be speaking with them very shortly. And Jason Fordham as well from Perfect. He has in-depth knowledge of our contactless strategies that we're going to be speaking with. Rich and Georgianne, are you there?
Yes.
We're here.
Excellent.
Good morning and good afternoon, I guess we should say, right?
Absolutely, yes. I was glad that you guys could join us because, like Management One, you also have decades of experience in the general retail area. And some of your knowledge of the strategies we're going to present today are stretching across the wide variety of things that you guys provide in your own speaking engagements.
Absolutely. We've been together for 30 years as a speaking team, but our retail careers started way before that.
And we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that, right?
I always like to start things off with a quote that really sets the stage for what we're talking about. And I couldn't think of a better one than from General Patton. And he says, "Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity." And I think COVID-19 is a perfect example of that. It didn't come with a manual. Nobody was told exactly how they were going to save their business, but make no mistake, this is a battle to save their business. And I'm just in awe of some of the quick thinking and some of the creative strategies that retailers have come up with to really not only save their business, but in some cases elevate it from where it was before. They were thrust into a lot of uncomfortable spaces, and those retailers that are creative enough and willing to pull themselves out of it will put themselves in a much better position moving forward. So let's talk about some of the basics. We're not going to spend time on this webinar talking about hand sanitizer and putting masks on your employees. There's a lot of general knowledge that's already available. If you go to the CDC website, OSHA, I've included a lot of links on this presentation that you're going to get afterwards. And you can read through the Small Business Guide, guidance on preparing workplaces. We have the National Retail Federation put out a great guide through their Operation Open Doors project. our own retail recovery playbook for Management One. There's a lot of information to cover the basic stuff. I also put UniFirst Corporation there as well. Georgianne, you mentioned that yesterday. Could you touch on UniFirst briefly?
So UniFirst is a company that supplies uniforms to businesses, but they expand beyond that. They also have sanitation services where they will come in and they'll clean your store, clean your restrooms. They can provide you with hand sanitizers and other things that you need to keep your store open and clean and sanitized and healthy. So it's a good website to go check out. It's a good resource to check out.
Excellent. I put a link in that as well for the folks when we get the presentation out afterwards. The other thing that came up in research as well is staff scheduling. Whether you have a handful of employees in a small boutique or you're managing multiple locations, with the new hours that your store has or the new responsibilities that a lot of the employees have with sanitation or online responsibilities, how are you going to manage all of these things? And we've seen a lot of retailers develop technology. Some of them before were dealing with whiteboards, Excel spreadsheets. And if you're multiplying a handful of employees by dozens of new responsibilities, it can get out of hand really quick. So how are you going to stay up to date when things go awry, if an employee has to immediately shift their schedule or if new responsibilities come into play? It's a lot easier to do with some of the newer pieces of technology out there. And it helps you keep in contact with employees too. Some of the sites that we put up here, whether it's Shiftboard or Deputy, wheniwork.com, link directly to employees' cell phones. So when things change, there's up to the minute communication, and it's two ways as well. The other thing to think about is staff screening. There are a lot of different methods that people are employing, from taking temperatures. How are you going to screen your employees? I wanted to bring the panel in here as well to get their take on it. One of the things that I saw was an employee questionnaire just handed out daily before the shift started. We live in a pretty litigious society, so these are not only beneficial for health reasons, but it's good to build up a track record just in case a former employee or maybe a customer tries coming after you for the responsibility of contracting the virus, God forbid. It's good to have that daily record to know that you've tried to stay on top of it as best you can. Georgianne and Rich, what else have you seen as far as staff preparedness?
We haven't seen anybody use an employee questionnaire yet, but it's brilliant, and everybody listening should start doing that. Just print it on your computer. But most of the retailers that we've spoken with, every day they take the employee's temperature, they monitor where verbally, not in a questionnaire, they monitor verbally where they've been, how they're feeling, is anyone in their home feeling ill? Because they realize that now, in addition to being a retailer, you also have to take care of the health and safety of the people who work in your store and the people who visit your store. And you're right, Nico, about the insurance part of it. You know, you have a new responsibility to keep these people safe.
Absolutely, it's a perfect segue.
I think the challenge is absolutely knowing what to do and what to look for. We've walked into stores that were in fact taking temperatures, and I asked one of the guys that was taking the temperatures of everyone, and I said, what is absolutely over the top? You can't go to work today, you've got to go home. He says, you know what, I'm really not too sure. My job's to write down the temperatures. Well, I guess that's okay if it gets immediately to somebody in the business and they take a look at it and say, this is a problem, let's call this employee in and talk to them really quick and find out how, what's happening, and get it again to make sure we got the right reading.
Well, that's something that retailers need to react to right away, because if someone has a temperature, and I'm not sure what that temperature is, but I'm sure we could Google it and find out really fast. But you can't let the people in the store.
Yep.
If you have workers who have that elevated temperature, they can't come in.
Yeah, and to your point, retailers not only have to be sanitation experts, but they have to be medical experts as well. And it's a lot.
They do. They absolutely do. I mean, they need to be reading the information that's available to them to understand what everything means. That's a critical
One of
issue.
the resources that you listed on a previous slide, Nico, was from the National Retail Federation. And this week they released the guidelines for every state, because up until now it was up to a retailer to do the research to find out what was going on, and it changes every day. So you need to do it yourself or assign someone to find out what's the guideline today. But there is, if you go back a couple of slides, you'll be able to find that the one from the National Retail Federation. It's got lots of information.
Yeah, it's actually this second link that we have here on the upper right. And we did include that in our retail recovery playbook. They put that map out a few weeks ago, but they just revamped it a few days ago with a completely new map of the United States. Before it was more of a spreadsheet version, and now it's completely interactive. I strongly urge everyone to check all of these links out on
Let me
the
tell you
right
why
hand.
that's let me tell you why that's really critical. Is because not only are we watching for our people to be okay, but we're watching for the general public when they come in to be assured. And the general public is assured when we brag about how cherished our staff is, as well as our customers, and they see that everybody has got an answer for, how do I feel, or, what is my temperature? So what we're really doing
Right.
is kind of laying down a mat that everybody walks on. That's the promise of the business, and that's
Yeah.
smart business in this time.
Yeah. I think it comes down to this. Things are changing, states are rebounding, they're going back to different phases. That's changing daily in a lot of states. And I think that I saw a sign on Facebook that I thought just hit it right home. The pandemic is not over just because you're over it.
Yeah.
You cannot become complacent in your store and think, I don't need to check for masks, I don't need to check for temperatures. Yes, you do. You do,
Well, we're going to
because
touch
you
on
have
that in the next slide as well. Before we go to that next slide, Georgianne, I wanted you to talk about, you mentioned this yesterday, contacting your insurance agent. That was something that I didn't have on here originally, but I think it was a great idea.
Yeah, so Rich and I did a lot of research on, what do you really need to do? We put together a store closing checklist and a store reopening checklist. And one of the things that came up was you need to talk to your insurance agent. You are doing different things in your store. Things have changed. And one of our clients said to us that she had been delivering purchases. Customers would order online, or they'd phone in an order, and she would drive them to the customer's local homes in her car. And she found out that her insurance company did not cover her for deliveries. Now, she could buy an additional policy for $300, but it's important to check if you're doing those things, if you're bringing in people outside, standing in the front of your store and curb service, and there's a lot of things to check. So it's always worth a phone call to your insurance agent, always worth a call.
Smart. We also did some research. If an employee does test positive, what are retailers doing in response to that? And there was a wide range of things, from nothing, which is unfortunate, to a full store closure and notices across all channels, email, signage, everything, letting folks know that we do have a case in the store and we're doing everything we can. Rich, I think you mentioned kind of a middle ground strategy that was good as well. You mentioned one of the retailers you work with.
Yeah, I did. I'm really squeamish about putting out a message and letting people carry that message further with word of mouth, because it always goes where you don't want it to go. But we talked yesterday about, what do you do if you have someone that does turn out to be infected? Do you tell the people, this store, you put a sign in the window, this store has had a known infection and we're closing it down to clean it up? I think you're going to scare everybody, and that's a hard rebound or recovery to get. But it is not so hard if we kind of soften the message by saying, because of reported cases of, or those kinds of languages, we have decided to take the positive action of cleaning and disinfecting our store. See you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. That type of thing. That way, at least you're not scaring anybody, but you're saying that there's a reported case. So, you're not hiding the fact. It's just kind of scary when it says three people.
You can't hide it. This sign from Square Roots Restaurant says it all. If somebody in your store gets sick and you hide it, that perception is going to come back and bite you in the rear end. especially for a small retailer or a small restaurateur. Las Vegas right now, one of the casinos, someone who works in their food service department died of COVID-19. He got sick, went to the hospital the next day, died the next day. And there are people who worked with him in those kitchens. It's pandemonium right now, people in Vegas who have been there. You have to be upfront.
That's why
Yeah,
I
and
said we have had reported 2 cases or a case in our store.
Right.
That's why we're closed today. See you tomorrow at 8.
Yep.
And,
Yeah,
with
and
the
I-
other verbiage, you've got to do that.
I think the strong takeaway here is that we are sanitizing the store. We are taking action. That's really what people want to know, and that's what they're going to take away from any of the communications that you send.
And customers need to see you doing that.
Absolutely.
They need to see you doing that while they're in your store.
So let's talk about what you touched on earlier, Georgianne, and that was people that just don't want to wear masks. They don't feel that it's their duty or their responsibility to wear a mask. We've seen a lot of social media cropping up of folks that are really taking offense to it. Some are bringing in fake exemption cards. How are we going to tackle that? I've seen a couple of signs in stores that are going about it maybe the wrong way. I think you need to check your tone when you're telling folks what to do with their own bodies, but you need to stick to your guns.
Right. I think that pretty soon, if the way things are going, I think pretty soon there's going to be a federal mandate that says you need to wear masks. Because if you look at the science, this isn't about how you feel about it or how you don't. There's a science behind it. And the science is showing right now that wearing a mask and social distancing and staying out of large groups helps the disease from spreading. And whatever your personal beliefs are, I get it, but you still you have an obligation to keep people safe who come into your store, and you can't get past that. Rich and I are big believers in that you can write any sign to make it positive in a positive voice or a not positive voice. You're talking about, Nico, checking your tone. And we think that you can still be polite in writing these signs, but when it comes to COVID-19, they can't be too lengthy. They need to be a couple of sentences politely in your face. You must wear a mask to enter this store. And then if somebody doesn't have one, have some available.
And a great opening to that sign would be, we cherish our staff. We cherish our customers. That's the headline. Then put it down. Everyone's required, whatever the language is under that, everyone will therefore be obligated and to wear a mask for admittance to our store.
We posted on our retailadventuresblog.com a lot of things for COVID, but one of the things that we posted recently were the American Disabilities Association, the ADA regulations for wearing masks. And you would be surprised at the things people tell you about why they can't wear them, that the ADA isn't buying. So I would recommend you read that too.
Absolutely. I think the main thing to take away is to just have a policy and stick to it. Don't let people bully their way past your policies.
Yeah, 2 people get away with it, your staff will either become really tenders of it, or if they see people getting away and really under the management's, kind of like blind eye to it, 3 weeks later, it'll be running ragged in the store. There will be no rule. There will be no safety. So the standard is the standard, and that is it. And that's what store management has got to say to everybody in the store.
Yeah. Look, wearing a mask isn't fun. We all know that. We have in my town, we have a brand new delicatessen grocery store, independently owned, just opened. And I went in it the other day and I thought, this is really cool. And then as I walked around, I noticed that none of the employees had their masks pulled over their noses or their mouths, and that they had not properly separated the checkout counter so that people were 6 feet apart. I'm not going back there for a very long time, which is sad because I love Indies and it's in my neighborhood. But people need, I can't say it enough, pay attention to the science.
Absolutely. So that was good on safety. I think we've covered the basics at least. So let's get creative. I think that's what retailers really want to hear as far as our strategies. Beginning with the sales process. Rich, you had a really good take on the cognitive connection that people should be establishing now, especially with
Well,
masks on.
yeah, well, we talked about when people come in, how they see the store, and how they're involved in the store quickly without hearing some, bland, "May I help you?" I don't know. Do I look like I need help? That's what I always say. I just hate that. But we say it's kind of like going into an amusement park, walking into a store, and that's what it should do. It should be an opening, and it should be something that they see a vista that just knocks me off my feet, so to speak, from a merchandising perspective and story perspective. An interaction with the people that are in the stores. Obviously, we've all heard everyone say, "If I hear you say, 'May I help you?' I'll boot you out the door." You can't say that. But there's a cognitive involvement that really creates interest in staying from a customer's perspective. And one of the things when we talk about sales training, one of the things we say is talk about anything except the store. You can talk about the product. Don't say "Welcome to our store," but talk about the product, and just say the first thing you say is, "It's a pleasure to, hi, how are you?" Or whatever the case might be. Don't stop talking and say, my favorite one is, "It looks like it might rain today. Is it raining?" That all of a sudden that takes the customer out of that jaunt into the store with that mission that they're going to be asked by, "Can I help you?" or whatever. You will find yourself falling into conversations if you're on the floor as a salesperson. When you fall into a conversation, you create a relationship, and that's when it really starts to happen. And likely you'll hear a customer say, what I really came in for was bing, we got it. We just did it smartly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I included a
It's
link
more.
here. Sorry, Georgiana,
I was
about
going to say. That's okay. I
projecting
was going
hope
to say
and wonder.
yeah, exactly. And eye contact is more important now than ever before. Your body language is more important. Don't be standing there with your arms crossed, because even if it's comfortable, people perceive that badly. Use your words better. Ask a lot of questions. Pay attention to your tone of voice. Suggest items. You can't hover over people, but people, are hesitant to come in. They want to feel welcome. They want to feel safe, and that has a lot to do with how the sales associates interact with the customers when they come in. This is not the time just to wave and say hi and then don't go near them until they come to the cash wrap.
May I help you? May I help you?
Yeah, they need
Exactly.
interaction.
And the link that we have here in the presentation slides, it's actually a great, about a 15-minute video from Bob Phibbs, the retail doctor, and he talks about not projecting the fear or discomfort that people are obviously going to see when you see somebody with a medical mask in the store. We've always talked with our sales staff when we're speaking with our clients about selling whole solutions, not just specific items. And we're going to touch on merchandising in a little bit here in the presentation. The other thing that we mentioned too, we touched on it earlier about the sales staff taking on more responsibilities. And the other thing would be online businesses. We had a client of ours in Bozeman, Montana that went the full route of just hiring somebody specifically to manage their online business. And instead of reshaping their existing staff to try to understand online, they went ahead and just hired a full-time expert, and they've seen some great results specifically in their online space. So sometimes it's not just about retraining. You can just do a full rehire and really dedicate those resources.
We have walked into retailers that are probably some of the smartest, I would say some of the smartest people to sell a retail store product online and make an incredible dent in their competitive structure. And when I say competitive, I mean beyond my imagination of what they could produce per square foot by doing what they are doing on the net. And I think that goes to the fact that they get people who know what they're doing. It's not we don't live in a world of, we don't have a luxury of experimenting. I'm going to run this email and see what happens. We need to have people that know how to impact people. And so that, the point is right. If you have someone, even a college, like a local college that has students that are now doing it, that coming down and co-oping in the store and working with you, be a perfect place. And at the same time, you business owners are learning exactly what is going on. And that all of a sudden feeds your mind about this changes on a daily basis on what is happening. And what that takes everybody to is becoming somewhat of an expert. So it's not
Facebook
that hard, but it is working.
Facebook Live is an independent retailer's best friend right now. Don't do it by yourself.
Yes.
Bring your sales associates on with you. Let your customers get to know everybody who works in the store.
Absolutely, and we're not going to spend any time on that one today because we did a full hour session on customer connection that talks in depth about Facebook Live in particular. So I would urge everyone to go back in our series and revisit that one because Georgianne is 100% correct with social media on that. Let's talk about the mask itself. Back in March, it was almost impossible for folks to even get a mask. There was such a short supply. But we've come a long way from just the standard medical blue mask, and we're seeing a lot of folks really reinvent their employee masks to be a little friendlier, whether it's using brand colors. Some people are literally painting a smile on the mask. There's been a lot of folks talking about how to really connect with the customer with the mask on, smiling with your whole face, using body language, as Georgianne mentioned earlier. I found this one from the San Diego Opera where they literally cut a window into the mask. They did it particularly so that they could read lips with their deaf employees and their deaf clientele, but it also is an excellent way of looking at facial features as well.
Yeah. You almost have to have a mask policy because I've gone into some places and seen people, not employees necessarily, but people walking through stores that have terrifying masks on.
Yeah.
That's not what you want, is the perception of your store. Monsters and, horrible. It needs to be something that represents your brand.
Know your brand and know your audience, I think is a solid takeaway.
I like the idea. I mean, we joke about it, but I always, when I walk in stores, I will look at people and say, behind that mask, are you smiling? Are you happy? And everybody, you can see their eyes, and their eyes give you the answer, right? If they kind of close their eyes and turn around, they're not happy. But I do get a kick out of people that make that particular mask, George, with the paint, put a smiley face on it or whatever the case might be. I think that's important. Look, any mask sends a message if you change it from the stock out of the box mask. And
Yeah.
so, be very careful what message you send. Ask yourself, or, ask the employee what the message is behind their mask. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good one too. Ask the employee what's behind the mask. I like that. It initiates conversation. I should have included the photo, but there was a very simple one that I found. It was a black mask with just a white smiley face line and then the brand's logo as the nose on the mask. And it was extremely simple but effective.
Perfect.
So let's talk about store layout. We reached out to a lot of our clients to see what they're doing, and one of the processes that really jumped out to me was one of our clients out in Austin, Texas, Caravel Shoes. Rick Ravel transformed his entire store. They mainly deal in orthopedic and other types of shoes. How are we going to get as many people as we possibly can into the store safely for such an intimate relationship like trying on the shoes? And he went the full route of developing these makeshift cubicles. While they're not the most aesthetic, they are extremely functional. And there was a write-up about them in one of the local publications about how effective it was. And he's seeing a tremendous response in terms of foot traffic.
Well, if he's fitting specialty shoes, orthopedics and orthotics and things like that, he has to spend quality time with his customers. So it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
A lot to clean, though. It's a lot to clean after each customer, but it works.
It is a lot to clean. I actually didn't reach back out to him to see what how many hours of sanitation, talking about new responsibilities for their sales staff. I can't imagine what responsibilities they have here. We also reached out to Tish Boutique, another client of ours. They transformed the back lot of their store into a whole sale event space, kind of a true yard sale. And I thought that was a great way of expanding their square footage and remaining safe.
Is it an ongoing event that every day?
No, I think this particular one was a one-off, but given the success, I would imagine that they would repeat it again.
You know, crowds
You
draw
know,
crowds. If people were driving by and saw something going on like that, it's like the sidewalk sale, right? All of a sudden they go, why don't we stop and just go and see what's going on? That's
a
brilliant.
lot of merchants in downtown Geneva, Illinois, did that in the front of their stores. They just
Right.
put everything out on the sidewalk and until their stores were opened, and it works.
Yeah, and I think it's
fun. It works.
worth reaching out to your local chamber of commerce to see what the rules are for your local space. You know,
Right.
how much of this public space can you use? It's definitely worth asking, even if it's only a
Okay,
few square feet in front of the store.
That's important because I heard on Good Morning America this morning, I think they were talking about Miami. Not sure. You'll have to go back and look for the video. But on Good Morning America, they said this morning in this town that if a retailer or a restaurant broke a rule, for the first time they do it, they shut your store for 5 days. The second time you are caught in violation, they shut your store for 10 days. And the third time you're shut down for 30 days. And that's for violating whatever the guidelines are for that community.
Yeah, COVID-19 is tough enough. I don't think people need to
It's getting
shut their
serious.
stores down. They don't need any more reasons to shut their stores down.
You know what? I agree. First of all, I applaud anybody that tries. I mean, that's the person that don't tell them how to do it. Just tell them to do it. Okay,
Yep.
Pat,
Right.
watch me. I'm gonna have an outdoor store. And you know what? If you find out you're wrong, because George, I didn't see that, but you know, that's brutal to take a retailer who's trying his life out to do a business and have them come over and say it's 5 days that you're out.
Well,
I mean,
Rich,
that's really scary.
they're talking about corralling a virus, and they have community guidelines and state guidelines, and if they find out that the retailer is not following them, that's their mandate.
I can
That's why
understand. I can
would definitely
understand the
urge people
people
to-
problem with that. Yes.
Gotta
But-
research.
but-
Can I add something about merchandising?
Please.
So your store and your front windows need to be exciting, tell a story. You've been closed for a number of months. Now you're reopened. People are coming back. You have a gazillion things that you're juggling because a lot of retailers right now used to have just a brick and mortar store, but now they're selling online. So now they have a brick and mortar and they have an online business, and that's not going away for a very long time. But let's talk about your sales floor. You have space on your sales floor that's considered lakefront property. That's what Rich and I call it. So when I walk in the front door of your store, about 10 feet inside the front door is where you need to put a fixture that's called a speed bump. It's a multi-layer table that tells a story, cross merchandise on it, because that single display is the first thing that a customer sees when he or she enters your store, and it sets the flavor for the rest of the store.
It is number one. It's desired because customers do not want to see the same old store that they saw, 8 weeks ago that closed down. They want to see something new.
Right.
That's going to jazz them. But you're right, George. That upfront presentation is exactly like someone walking through the little tunnel, and then they come out and they look and they go, "Oh my gosh, look at that! It's the Queen's Castle." I mean, all of a sudden, Disneyland, the Queen, everybody's there.
Cinderella.
Whatever. It's somebody's
Here's
castle.
Well, that's actually
Here's-
perfect. That's a perfect segue into this final one with Pigeonhole in Australia. They're using forecast demand data to know what products need to be in that speed bump. And that's right in the wheelhouse for Management One. How are people looking at their sales data to know what the hot items are that people want to see? And how often are you changing that out? Is it daily? Is it weekly?
Well,
And
speed
that
bump
is-
should be.
Here's a great idea that we implement in almost every store. We say to the management of the store, the speed bump's got to consistently change. And so we have made sultans of sizzle, or we called the people that work on the sales floor. And you're a sultan of sizzle for this week or this 2 weeks, which means that your responsibility is to make this speed bump, this welcoming, presentation, the Sultan of Sizzle, to make it sizzle. And you would be amazed at how great people grab a hold of that responsibility and how much competition. Everybody wants to do one just a little bit
Get them
better. It's a
involved.
wonderful thing. Really
Your
involved.
speed bump displays need to change once a week, whether they need it or not. And again, if you go on our blog, there's a lot of articles about getting your store ready for merchandising in general, but also, during this time, you have to continually show customers something new and different. But that lakefront property, the front door of your store is number one. If you have a center door, the second most important selling space of your store is on the right side of the door. The third is on the left. Your cash wrap is also important. So if you have questions about that, we're store layout specialists. Give us a call. But you cannot mess up your store layout, especially now.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Best foot.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about, once they're in the store, how are we going to try to adopt some contactless processes? I think that's where Jason's been waiting in the wings. I think that's where Jason's really shining in here, because Perfect actually did a post-COVID research study, and I'll let Jason talk about some of the findings there.
Thanks, Nico. And I absolutely agree with everything that's been said thus far. When you are bringing in shoppers, you need to excite them, but you also need to do one other key component, which is provide them the opportunity to have the experience that they're looking for. So every one of these shoppers has been designated, or relegated, I should say, to online shopping, which presents an entirely different experience than the store itself. You're in control. No one's asking you, Rich, your favorite line, may I help you? Unless you got a little chat bot on the side, which then it's just as bad as if someone's walking into the store and getting that question. But you need to provide them with the option. Before COVID, people were hesitant to respond to the associate simply because they're frequently getting the may I help you question. So going back to your statement, Rich, of getting them trained, having them engage in the right conversation and approach the shopper in the right way, it's critical. But in our post-COVID research, we've really found that even more people are not interested in speaking with an associate right now because they've got a preset notion that either it's dangerous or it's going to be a disappointing engagement. In fact, our research showed that right now 65% of shoppers prefer not to have that interaction, which is up 30% from where it was pre-COVID. So you need that sales training that Rich spoke of earlier. But there's also alternatives to help persuade the shoppers who aren't even ready, even if you have the best training, to get into that engagement. And that's really setting up what we would consider a contactless sales experience, one that I would say is a shopper-led sales experience. And it's a lot of what we've done with our customers is help them understand what are the options for this. How do you deliver such an experience? And it really starts with a lot of what you showed with the shoe store, Nico, which is providing the opportunity for a pre-staged environment, something that's safe and yet provides the opportunity to get all the access to the products that the shopper needs to see, needs to feel, needs to try on even. We talk about pre-staged fitting rooms, providing in these either the existing online store or what would be the new online stores for all the boutiques and independents that have really started this digital journey, giving the option to set an appointment so that someone can feel confident that they're going to get to a store and not have to wait in a line that wraps around the corner, which you're finding some cases with occupancy limits, but also that the product that they are looking for is going to be there. Was there a comment?
No, I was agreeing with the lines outside the store, yeah.
So, and we can talk about that as well, of how can you manage that more effectively, but the idea of providing that reservation or that product availability ahead of time, it has a massive impact. In fact, we saw that 70+% of shoppers who said that they're going to either avoid stores for the foreseeable future or shop in stores much less, said they would return if they had the opportunity to know that the product was in the store that they're looking to visit. In fact, it just points to an overall mindset that existed during COVID and is seeming to proliferate post the reopenings, which is people are shopping with purpose. In fact, they're shopping with more purpose than they do on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or during the Q4 and the holiday period. People want to have an efficient experience, and the shoppers want to know that it's going to be safe. So providing that pre-staged or the appointment setting really provides that opportunity. Taking it another level, giving the opportunity to interact with a digital kiosk that can be quickly cleaned or a digital associate even, and giving the best experience you can while having some safety nets and social distancing from the associate. It's not going to deliver quite the same as a really strong associate, but it certainly gives opportunities for the associates to get involved by delivering contactlessly. If someone says, hey, I want to try this on, or I want to see something else, and I don't want to have to necessarily leave a fitting room or try to go rummage through the racks to find it. Providing this contactless fulfillment tied in with the digital associate goes a long way in giving that shopper the service that they need, but also doing it with a socially distanced environment. And the best part is you can even extend the experience so that it involves contactless payment, either through a mobile app or self-checkout that provides email receipts. You don't have to exchange bags. You don't have to exchange paper receipts. You can do this all digitally. And in fact, I even did this the other day. I was shopping in a home improvement store and didn't want to have to go up to stand in a massive line. I just checked out and did a pickup in store option where it was a self pull for some lumber, and I was able to do that directly from the store itself. So providing those types of options is a massive jump in service and in providing that shopper-led experience to the customers. So I think that's a great way to engage even those that are hesitant to speak with an associate, which we've seen is increased right now.
Yeah, and I think we have so many retailers that now that they're forced online, where they didn't maybe even have a website before, and were forced to create one, now they're going to have to go the next step and really see how they can align their in-store inventory with their online inventory, because a lot of this really doesn't work effectively if they don't have that alignment in place. And I was really glad to see that Perfect was taking steps in that. One of the things we talked about yesterday, Jason, was if you do have those things in alignment, you could really get seamless. Placing a QR code on an item tag that links to a page can offer some pretty seamless checkout options.
Well, and it goes far beyond that, because you have the ability to provide an entirely mobile experience that is safe and people are very comfortable with. But the data that you get from that can just help perpetuate the appropriate marketing messages, the appropriate engagement with, and even structure some merchandising. You obviously at Management One know what that looks like in terms of engagement with that inventory data. It shows a huge opportunity to just do a self-checkout, but then provide an extra set of consumer information that's going to define what the speed bump would look like potentially for the next week, define what merchandise you're providing. Overall, there's just a huge opportunity beyond the ability to check out. It goes into the data as well. And the best part is, you say this here, that you can just do this entirely contactlessly and just show the sales associate the digital receipt you have and walk out the door. And it's a more efficient version of Costco, if you will. The one other thing I'd bring up right here, we've talked on the last slide about the lines that wrap around the store. Another easy usage of a QR code, and if you ever have any questions about how to do this, reach out to Perfect. But you have the ability to provide a simple tablet in front of the store. If you do have lines building up, people are walking away, they're afraid of standing in a lengthy line. You can provide, very similar to a check-in at a restaurant, the ability to just scan a QR code, put someone in a queue and let them know there's 5 people in front of you. We'll let you know when it's time to come back, and it frees somebody up so that they don't feel tethered to a line and stuck into an environment that they simply won't engage with, which is what I've heard from a lot of friends and clients. So
yeah, we actually are going to touch on that one in an upcoming slide here as well.
Great.
What I liked was the stat that you have here where 60% of people planning on switching to primarily online would return to the store if they knew the inventory. So that generates a demand to come into the store.
Absolutely. In fact, if you see the next one, 65% would return if they had that self-service experience. Cumulatively, 86% said they would return to the store if they had either the inventory or the self-service experience. So you can bring all of those wayward customers back to your store by just providing the right experience.
Yeah, I think the takeaway here, the good takeaway is try to align your online and digital as best you possibly can. Even if the website is new, that's going to be the main takeaway on this one. We're running short on time now, so I got to move it along to merchandising. Back in March, we did one of our webinars talking about marketing and merchandising, and we mentioned having masks in the store. About a week later, I can't remember if it was CDC or the World Health Organization, did a hard pivot saying that maybe masks might not be quite that effective. A couple weeks after that, they pivoted again, saying that yes, they are effective. And after that, it just seems to have exploded in the fashion world in the last month or so. We're seeing many top brands embrace it. I included a link to an LA Times article that had 17 different manufacturers that are creating these outfits linked with the mask and the shirt. And I thought, talking about full sets instead of specific items, what a great way of increasing your average order value. The masks themselves aren't really that expensive, but what if you could link it to one of your higher priced items like a shirt or a pair of pants or an overcoat? And we're seeing a lot of these paired items come in from high-end manufacturers or local artisans. There are a couple of our other clients that are reaching out to the local community and really tapping into that resource, which again strengthens their bond with the local community as well.
I know creative retailers that are selling masks, but they're also selling kits to bling them up. So they might be sequins or, you know, almost like bedazzling or paints. And so just instead of selling the mask in your store, you put together this little kit so they can personalize it.
That's also a great strategy too.
Yeah, I think craft stores across the country now are really having a dance party because they are buying tons of product and bringing not only take it home and do it, but classes as well. I think they're probably having a ball with it. And the only thing I'm really surprised that I haven't seen is any sports. Maybe because of the lack of sports.
What, are you kidding me? I have a Blackhawks mask.
Yeah, there are definitely sports license masks out there for sure.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been looking for a Michigan.
You don't get out much, do you?
Can I speak?
But that also brings us to, we were talking earlier about what do you put in your speed bump, and this works for the mask, the pairing as well. You know, really looking at your open to buy plan, knowing what your hottest items are will let you know, maybe I should pair that with a mask. Maybe I could reach out to a vendor and find some of these items. And if you're really leveraging your open to buy plan, you'll have the available cash on hand to jump on these trends when they crop up. I mean, this trend is only a matter of weeks old.
Let me tell you how crazy this could get. A sporting goods store could team up with a craft store for all the stuff they need, the little paints and stuff, and have a contest about who represents the best looking mask for their alma maters. What a great idea.
Absolutely. I'm curious to see in the summer. There was an article I read saying that it was payments.com that masks are going to be the accessory for the summer. And what a pivot from just 8 weeks ago.
Because you don't get a choice.
Yeah.
It's going to be the accessory of the summer. Might as well make it look good.
What is it? When you get lemons, make lemonade, right? Okay.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the customer experience. Jason touched on it earlier about what people expect to see when they're in the store. And I ran across an article in Forbes talking about the Gen Z demographic, folks that were born in the age of the internet after 96. And a lot of folks just write them off as, oh, they're online only. They don't really care about being in stores. That's really not true, according to this article.
That's the opposite.
They want a much more robust experience. And it's easy to write them off just saying, well, whatever, that's one demographic. But what I liked about this article is they really linked it to their influence. Yes, it's one demographic, but they have an amazing amount of influence over the other demographics. The stat that they have here is 70% of parents of these Gen Z kids or grandkids offer influence in their buying decisions about apparel. So if dad or grandpa is telling you what pair of pants to buy, you might pay a little more attention. So how are people going to cater to this demographic?
You know, it's interesting that people talk about Generation Z being an online generation. They like to do things online, but they prefer brick and mortar shopping over online shopping.
Absolutely.
They want the experience. They want to hang with their friends. It's social. They share what happens in the stores online. So Gen Z is really the savior of the most recent generations because they love brick and mortar.
Absolutely. So how are we going to link the two together? We've heard of B2C businesses. We've heard of B2B. They're actually flipping it to a C2B. They call it clicks to bricks. And how are we linking these online and brick and mortar experiences? Georgianne, you talked about changing your speed bump every week. Some of our clients are posting walkthroughs of their stores online as just kind of a digital walkthrough posted to social media. Jason touched on scanning as well.
That's the platform. And the platform is they're going to watch you. They're never going to be off the computer, but they're going to watch you and they're going to see things happening in the store that they've never seen before. So recognizing that the store has got to become a living, changing animal every week. And that's why I said, if a manager of a store on Main Street today thinks that he can do it, he's nuts. You've got to include and assign these types of requirements and changes in the stores with the people that work there. There's two reasons. Number one, it'll get done. And number two, it gives everybody a sense of ownership in the store. And that's when things really start coming together for customers. So, you know, we talk about Facebook Live and walking through the store and talking about new products. Everybody wants to see it. And it will drive those people back into the store. I mean, that's just a fact. So I think that the most powerful thing is exactly change every week something in the store, one at least dominant and a lot of smaller things, and bundle them, show them it's really easy to buy and get them in the store, and they will come. That generation will come.
What Jason was talking about earlier with QR codes really kind of fell off in the last 3-4 years, but they're making a resurgence. I think it was 2017. As soon as Apple incorporated QR scanning capabilities directly into the camera, we started seeing a real resurgence of scannable codes like QR codes because they don't require outside apps anymore. You literally just turn your camera on and hold it up to the sign, and it links to whatever digital content you have. So make your store more of a digital leader in the space. Give them more to look at and give them more to take away.
It's a treasure hunt. Now everybody enjoys a treasure hunt. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
All kinds of options. It's entertainment. So it's not really retail. We've kind of changed it to retail-tainment. What did we call it before, George?
Shoppertainment.
Shoppertainment, yeah. That's what it really is.
And it doesn't just have to be in the store. Jason also alluded to folks that have to stay in lines outside the store. If you can't avoid the line, then give them something to do when they're in line.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Jason, yesterday you mentioned the take a number. I did some research on that, and they call it virtual queuing. Can you touch on that one quickly?
Absolutely. Just providing a quick option that is contactless. It prevents someone from standing in line unnecessarily, frees them up to either go get a bite to eat or just to find themselves some space that's not in a crowd, which is obviously something everyone's trying to avoid. So it's a very easy implementation, and there's a lot of options for that. So again, reach out if you have any questions on it.
Strongly recommend folks to look into that one as well. We're running short on time here, so I do want to touch on pop-ups as well. Staying on that QR mentality, Georgianne, you mentioned pop-ups yesterday as far as some of the retailers that you're looking at.
Yes. So you can do pop-ups in places outside of your store. You can do a pop-up in your parking lot. You can do a pop-up with another retailer that sells something differently from what you sell. You can even do a pop-up inside your own store. We know a craft retailer that wanted to sell wanted to focus on some high-end yarns. So in the center of their store, they built a pop-up for a yarn retailer to sell the yarns. You know, it used to be that pop-ups were taking over storefronts or part of the mall that was empty, and now you have so many opportunities to hold them in so many different places. We have one client who has a truck, an old food truck, and she turned it into a store on wheels. So she pops up at, you know, different places where customers are, and they're easy to do. You merchandise in the same way that you merchandise your stores. You make them fun, you advertise them on social media and via email, and they can be a great way to add additional sales to your stores. You go to where customers are instead of waiting for them to come to you.
Yeah, kind of like what Rich said, that treasure hunt. A lot of people, they start following where these trucks are going to be, and it creates that sense of FOMO. Also linking
Exactly.
to stores in the community. It's a great way of doing a mutually beneficial arrangement with a store that maybe didn't have to close.
Exactly.
We had a retailer in Minneapolis that I put up on screen here. They rented a residential duplex and started taking appointments. They also moved all their inventory to protect from riots as well. But it's a great way of just staying agile if your store is closed.
Who's your next door
Retailers,
neighbor? Hey, come shop.
yeah, it's a store. Retailers are the most creative business people on the planet. Rich and I have said that forever, and nothing is going to change our minds, and this pandemic has just made it even more so.
And you know what? They're gamblers. They're great gamblers. And that's the fun
Yeah.
of the business. I buy it, I'm not sure, bang, we hit a home run. And, you know, that happens because they're not told how to do it. They're told to do it. I love that quote.
And also, that's a good segue into the next slide. This is our final slide as well. If you do take some of these gambles, how are you going to help mitigate some of the risk? And Georgianne, Rich, there was a webinar that I saw from you guys a few weeks back, and you mentioned refund retriever, and I wanted to touch on shipment auditing really quick.
Oh, man.
We
Yeah,
love refund retriever. There's
there
no
are,
space in that link, by the way. It's refundretriever.com, one word.
we met these folks at the ASD show, I think it was. But anyway, what they do is anybody that ships product out to you know, houses or wherever from their store, there is a, and I didn't even understand this. There is there's a guarantee that it's going to be there by a certain time. They can tell the retailer when it will be delivered. As such, if it's late, the retailer, if it's late, even a minute, the retailer is due a refund, not on the entire amount, but on a portion of what they paid for freight. What Retail Retriever does is they follow everything you ship. And at the end of the month, they send you a report and a check. And it's like finding money that you were leaving on the table, because we've never found out when that product got there and then back billed UPS or whatever because it didn't get there on time, or what was a guaranteed time. So what Retail Retriever does is they get clients, they monitor everything that's being shipped, and I think it's like a monthly deal. They come back with a monthly report
It's
on what they found, and they take 50 and you get 50. So it's
there,
like picking money up off the ground.
there's no contract
No
and
contract,
there's no fee.
Yep.
no fee. That's right.
That's
Check
what I
them
like
out.
most about it. You only get, they only take what they get. So if there's not, if
Right.
the audit finds nothing, then they aren't going to charge you anything.
Basically a free deal.
Yep. The
They'll
other thing
take
with
their
return
money out of you.
policies, with so many folks staying at home, the new fitting room is your home. So how are people
Exactly right.
handling the return policies? And we're seeing a lot of variable return policies now where you get a little extra time only if you return it in the store. And I thought that was a great way of getting bodies out of the house and back into the store to offer more services, upsell, extend the experience a little bit.
I think a lot of companies are extending the return policies. I know QVC has, HSN has, I think Target has. They're extended, and when the merchandise comes back, they isolate it for 24 to 48 hours, depending on the retailer,
Yes.
before they put it back on the sales floor, which is another safety thing to their customers. And if you you should be offering something like that. And if you do, that should be on your website. That should be on a sign somewhere in your store. Another way that you're protecting your shoppers.
Absolutely. Communicating all of these policies in store and digital channels is something that we touched on a lot in our previous webinar as well.
And I got to feel that that's almost a sales tactic. And what I mean by that is if you buy something and, I'm not really too sure, you might take it back that same day. But when you buy something and it goes on for an extended period of time, at some point you just decide to keep it.
Absolutely. We went slightly over time, as I feared we would, but I want to take a couple of questions. The good thing is the vast majority of these questions and comments are in regard to safety. So I'm going to refer back to a lot of the folks asking about taking temperatures and all of these things to really look at what's going on in your city, what the guidelines are for your city. You're not mandated to do anything yet, but as Georgianne said, we may get there. One of our
some cities are mandated and some states are mandated, so that's why you have to check with your local. Yeah.
Good point. Yep. One of our attendees is asking, this is for Georgianne, is refund retriever available for wholesale?
Yes, I believe it is.
I want to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Give him a call. Go online. Ask for Brian Gibbs. He's the president. He will explain everything to you and get you set up. I think it is. It is available to wholesale.
Yes, it is.
Because I've seen him walk through trade shows and talk to people who are exhibiting. So I'm going to say yes.
Excellent. One of ours is actually for Jason as well. And Jason, can you just touch briefly on, they were asking about how they possibly get the alignment with inventory if they don't have a website? I had a feeling that question would come up.
Sure. If you don't have a website, they're very easy to implement right now. That's one of the best things. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a Shopify or a BigCommerce or any of the other providers that are out there. A lot of them have gone with the approach of retailers need help, and so they're offering their services for free. It's pretty easy to get these things set up, but you can tie it back into your point of sale, whether you're using Clover or you're already using a Square or something like that. There's a lot of easy lead-ins to leverage your existing point of sale to tie that into online. Again, it gets down to the specifics of what you're using, but if you have any of those digital payment methods, then it's a pretty easy next step to get it onto a website, even if you don't have the website up. Reach out to myself, jason.fordham@perfit.io if you have questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually going to include, if you don't mind, all of the email addresses. Georgianne, Rich, if you don't mind, I'll include it all in the presentation slide. Great. Well, I know we went a little bit over time. There are a couple of extra questions that I'm going to respond to personally because I think they're a little lengthy in their answer, but I do want to thank our panel for joining us today. This actually does end our series of retail recovery, although it doesn't end our dedication to the retail community. We have some things in the works, partnerships that are in play for July, and a few new educational and actionable resources that are going to be coming up. So I'm excited to roll those out in the weeks to come. In the meantime, Georgianne, Rich, Jason, thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
I hope everyone can stay safe and be well.
Thank you.
You too.